The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched wider than most cities and reached so high that clouds sometimes formed near the ceiling on humid days. Thousands of seats arranged in perfect circles held representatives from hundreds of worlds, each species claiming their rightful place in the grand design of galactic civilization. The Cathani sat in their traditional red sections, their warrior culture demanding they face all potential threats. The Merdal occupied the golden zones. Near the trade discussion platforms, their multiple arms constantly moving as they calculated profit margins on handheld devices. The scholarly Fentok filled the blue academic sections, their large eyes focused on data tablets that displayed endless streams of research information. In the modest brown section reserved for newer members, 47 empty seats caught the pale light filtering through the massive crystal dome above. These seats had belonged to the human delegation for the past 15 years, ever since Earth had joined the Council as a junior member with limited voting rights. The seats looked the same as always, their simple design matching the understated nature of human participation in galactic affairs. Council Speaker Veltar, a tall Fentok with silver skin and eyes like liquid mercury, noticed the empty section. During his morning review of attendance records, his assistant, a young Merdal named Crixfin, approached with the daily briefing tablet clutched in 3 of his 4 hands. "Speaker Veltar, we have confirmed reports of human vessel movements throughout Council space," Crixfin said, his voice carrying the musical tones typical of his species. Long-range sensors detected approximately 1,200 human ships, departing various stations and colonies over the past 7 days. Veltar paused in his reading of trade proposals and looked up at his assistant. "Did Ambassador Kim Hyun-woo file departure notices? Protocol requires advance notification for such large-scale movements." Crixfin checked his tablet again, scrolling through official communications with practiced efficiency. "No formal notices were submitted, Speaker. The ships simply powered up their engines and left. Station commanders report that all departure procedures were followed correctly, but no destinations were declared and no return schedules were filed." The Speaker felt a small flutter of concern in his chest, though he could not quite identify why. Humans had always been punctual about paperwork, perhaps overly so. During Kim Hyun-woo's tenure as Earth's primary ambassador, the human delegation had never missed a filing deadline or failed to submit required documentation. Their reports were always complete, accurate, and submitted early. "What about Dr. Lee So-young at the Scientific Institute?" Veltar asked. "She has been working on the cross-species medical compatibility project for 3 years. Surely she would not abandon such important research without explanation." Crixfin consulted another section of his tablet. "Dr. Lee submitted her final research reports 2 days ago. All data has been transferred to the Institute's main database. Her laboratory has been cleaned and sealed according to standard protocols. Her resignation letter was brief but professional." Veltar requested a copy of the resignation letter and read it quickly. The message contained only 3 sentences. "I have completed my assigned research objectives ahead of schedule. All data and findings have been properly documented for future researchers. I wish the Institute continued success in its important work." The signature was digitally verified as authentic. As the morning session began, Veltar found himself glancing repeatedly at the empty humans section. The absence felt strange, like missing a quiet background sound that you only notice when it stops. Humans rarely spoke during council sessions, and when they did contribute, their comments were usually brief and practical. Ambassador Kim had possessed an unusual talent for asking simple questions that somehow revealed important problems everyone else had overlooked. Councillor Rathven of the Cathani called for attention from his species section. His voice boomed across the hall with the authority that came from commanding respect through strength. "Speaker Veltar, we require clarification on human military vessel movements near the Outer Rim territories. Our patrol ships report detecting human warships in sectors where no military exercises were scheduled. The human fleet movements appear to be part of a general withdrawal from Council space," Veltar replied, consulting the growing file of reports on his desk. "We have received similar observations from multiple sectors. Human vessels are departing from research stations, trade outposts, military bases, and civilian colonies throughout our territory." "Withdrawal?" Rathaven's question carried a note of surprise. "Have they declared any grievances?" Filed any formal complaints about council policies or decisions? Veltar checked his communications log again, though he already knew the answer. No grievances have been filed, no complaints have been registered, no requests for policy reviews or diplomatic negotiations have been submitted. The departures appear to be voluntary and coordinated, but no official explanation has been provided. From the Myrdal section, senior trader Gexmore raised one of his arms to request speaking permission. His species valued efficiency above all else, and unexplained disruptions to established patterns made them nervous. Speaker Veltar, human traders have been reliable partners in 17 major trade routes for the past decade. Their cargo vessels typically operate on precise schedules that other species depend upon for timely deliveries. If they have withdrawn from these routes without advance notice, significant economic disruption could result. Have you attempted direct communication with human trade representatives? Veltar asked. Yes, Speaker. All communication channels remain open and functional. Human trade stations respond to standard greeting protocols and provide basic navigation information when requested. However, when we inquire about future trade arrangements or shipping schedules, they simply state that human commercial operations are being relocated outside council space. They offer no additional details and decline to discuss specific timelines or alternative arrangements. The pattern was becoming clear, though its meaning remained mysterious. Humans were not storming out in anger, not making dramatic statements about injustice or unfair treatment. They were simply leaving, quietly and efficiently, as if they had made a collective decision that their time in council space had come to an end. Dr. Nethral, the Fentok representative for scientific affairs, requested permission to share information about human research activities. Her large eyes showed the deep concern that her species felt when important knowledge was threatened. Speaker Veltar, human researchers have been involved in 43 active projects across multiple scientific disciplines. Dr. Lee So-young's medical research was only one example. Human scientists have contributed to studies of stellar engineering, agricultural development, materials science, and theoretical physics. In every case, they have submitted complete final reports and transferred all data to appropriate council databases. However, they have also withdrawn from all ongoing collaborative projects and declined to participate in any new research initiatives. Have they expressed dissatisfaction with research conditions or funding allocations? Veltar asked. No dissatisfaction has been expressed, Dr. Nethral replied. Their research reports indicate that they achieved their stated objectives in every project. In fact, their completion rates and efficiency ratings were consistently above average. They simply appear to have concluded that their work here is finished. The morning session continued with routine business, but Veltar found his attention repeatedly drawn to questions about human motivations. Why would a species voluntarily surrender the benefits of council membership? Access to advanced technologies, expanded trade opportunities, mutual defense agreements, and shared scientific knowledge were valuable advantages that most species fought hard to obtain. During the lunch recess, Veltar met privately with senior representatives from the major species. They gathered in his private conference room, a smaller space designed for informal discussions among the council's leadership. Perhaps we have been too focused on our own concerns to notice human dissatisfaction, suggested Gexmore. Trade relationships require attention and maintenance. If we have been neglecting human interests in favor of more vocal species, they may have decided to seek better opportunities elsewhere. Rathven disagreed with typical Kethani directness. Humans have never complained about their treatment or demanded changes to their status within the council. If they had grievances, they should have expressed them through proper channels. Withdrawal without explanation is not honorable behavior. Dr. Nethral offered a different perspective. Human behavior has always been difficult for other species to predict. Their decision-making processes often involve factors that seem irrelevant to more logical species. Perhaps this withdrawal reflects some internal human priority that we do not understand. As afternoon sessions resumed, reports continued to arrive from across council space. Human colonies were being evacuated in orderly fashion, with all infrastructure left intact and functional. Human military units were withdrawing from joint patrol duties and shared defense positions, but they were providing adequate notice to ensure smooth transitions of responsibility. 6 months passed before the Council truly understood what they had lost when the humans departed. The first signs appeared in the trade networks that connected hundreds of worlds across the galaxy. Senior trader Gexmore stood in the main control center of the Myrdal commercial hub, watching displays that showed shipping delays spreading like a disease through the carefully planned routes that had operated smoothly for over a decade. The vegan grain shipments are running 18 days behind schedule, reported his assistant, Clixvan, whose forearms moved constantly between different control panels. The agricultural worlds in Sector 7 are reporting food shortages, and the mining colonies in the asteroid fields have stopped productivity bonuses due to reduced caloric intake among workers. Gexmore studied the route maps with growing frustration. These same shipping lanes had operated with remarkable efficiency for years, with cargo vessels arriving at their destinations within hours of predicted schedules. The mathematical precision had been so reliable that other species had built their own operations around the assumption that deliveries would always arrive on time. What changed in the routing algorithms? Gexmore asked. The same ships are following the same paths between the same destinations. That is exactly the problem, Clixvan replied, pulling up historical data on his primary screen. We have been using the shipping schedules and route optimizations that were established by Captain Park J. Ho and his human logistics team. We never questioned their methods because the results were so consistently successful. Now, we are discovering that their calculations included variables that we do not understand. The display showed a complex web of interconnected routes where cargo ships moved between stations in carefully timed sequences. When everything worked correctly, ships would arrive at transfer points just as other vessels were ready to receive their cargo, creating an efficient chain of deliveries that minimized waiting time and storage costs. Captain Park's routing system accounted for factors that our own specialists never considered important, Clixvan continued. He included calculations for seasonal variations in gravitational fields caused by planetary orbital patterns. He adjusted schedules based on crew fatigue levels and species-specific rest requirements. He even modified routes to take advantage of solar wind patterns that could provide minor fuel savings over long distances. Gexmore realized that his species had been benefiting from human expertise without ever truly understanding what the humans were doing. The Myrdal were excellent at executing complex trade operations, but they had relied on human analysis to design the systems that made those operations possible. Meanwhile, in the outer colonies where life was always challenging, Chief Engineer Choi Min-seo's absence was causing more immediate problems. Station Commander Yiltak of the Frontier Research Outpost struggled to understand why critical systems that had operated flawlessly for years were now failing with increasing frequency. The atmospheric recycling system has reduced efficiency by 30% over the past 4 months, reported Maintenance Supervisor Drekfon, a skilled Fentok technician who had worked on the station for 8 years. The water purification systems are consuming twice as much power as normal to achieve the same output levels, and the food production modules are showing signs of nutrient imbalance that could affect crop yields. Yiltak reviewed the maintenance logs on his personal tablet, searching for any changes that might explain the deteriorating performance. Have we modified any operational procedures recently? Changed any component specifications or supply sources? No changes have been made to official procedures, Drekfon replied. However, we have not implemented any of the minor adjustments that Chief Engineer Choi used to perform during her regular maintenance inspections. We always assumed that her modifications were simply fine-tuning that provided marginal improvements to already functional systems. The maintenance records revealed a different story. Choi Min-seo had made hundreds of small changes to standard Council technology over the years she had worked on Frontier installations. She had adjusted filter settings to account for the specific mineral content of local water sources. She had modified atmospheric processing parameters to optimize performance in the unique environmental conditions of different worlds. She had recalibrated food production systems to work more efficiently with locally available nutrient sources. Chief Engineer Choi never submitted formal reports about these modifications, Drekfon explained. When questioned about her changes, she would say that she was simply adapting standard equipment to work better in real-world conditions. She claimed that Council technical specifications were designed for ideal laboratory environments that rarely matched actual operating conditions on frontier worlds. The implications were troubling. Dozens of remote stations and colonies had been depending on human technical expertise to maintain essential life support systems. Without those modifications, equipment was slowly degrading back to its original performance levels, which were apparently inadequate for the harsh conditions found on frontier worlds. In the military sectors, Commander Velkron of the Kethani Defense Forces was discovering an even more disturbing pattern. His elite warrior units were suffering unexpected defeats in training simulations that they had dominated for years. Battle scenarios that had once resulted in easy victories now ended in catastrophic losses for Kethani forces. "Our tactical doctrine has not changed," insisted war leader Thekrar, one of Velkron's most experienced officers. "We are using the same strategies and formations that brought us victory in the Sector 9 conflicts and the successful defense of the trade route incidents. Our warriors are properly trained and adequately equipped." Velkran studied the simulation results with growing concern. The patterns were unmistakable. Kethani forces were making tactical errors that left them vulnerable to enemy counterattacks. Their formations were failing to adapt effectively to changing battlefield conditions. Their strategic planning was missing obvious opportunities and falling into predictable traps. "Request detailed analysis of our tactical planning from the past 5 years," Velkran ordered. "Compare our current performance with our historical success rates. Identify any variables that may have changed between our previous victories and our current difficulties." The analysis revealed the truth that no Kethani warrior wanted to acknowledge. Tactical advisor Kim Dae-hyun had been quietly participating in Kethani military planning for years, offering suggestions and observations that had significantly improved their strategic effectiveness. His contributions had been so subtle and diplomatically presented that the proud Kethani officers had convinced themselves that they were implementing their own ideas. The human advisor never claimed credit for tactical innovations, war leader Thekrar admitted reluctantly. He would present his suggestions as questions or observations about potential enemy responses to our planned actions. He would ask if we had considered certain contingencies or whether we might want to examine alternative approaches to specific challenges. Kim Dae-hyun had possessed an unusual ability to analyze warfare from perspectives that the warrior-focused Kethani culture did not naturally consider. He had understood the psychological factors that influenced enemy decision-making. He had recognized the economic constraints that limited enemy capabilities. He had anticipated the political consequences that could result from different tactical choices. The Kethani had been winning battles not just through strength and courage, but through the strategic insights of a human advisor who had never asked for recognition or reward for his contributions. As reports accumulated from across Council space, a disturbing picture emerged. Critical systems were failing, trade networks were collapsing, military effectiveness was declining, and research projects were stalling. In every case, the problems could be traced back to the quiet departure of humans who had been providing essential services that other species had never fully recognized or appreciated. Dr. Nethral compiled a preliminary assessment for the Council. Leadership, working with teams of specialists from multiple disciplines to understand the scope of the crisis. Her report made sobering reading for anyone who had assumed that human contributions to galactic civilization had been minimal. Human personnel were involved in significant support roles across 17 major sectors of Council operations, she wrote. Their activities included logistics coordination, technical optimization, strategic analysis, research coordination, and systems maintenance. In most cases, human contributions were not formally documented because they were classified as advisory or assistance functions rather than primary responsibilities. The report continued with specific examples that painted a picture of systematic dependency on human expertise. Human doctors had been quietly preventing disease outbreaks by identifying early warning signs that other species missed. Human economists had been maintaining financial stability by detecting market irregularities before they could cause major disruptions. Human engineers had been keeping critical infrastructure functional by compensating for design flaws in Council technology. 1 year after the humans departed, the crisis had grown beyond simple operational difficulties into a fundamental threat to galactic civilization. Council Speaker Veltar authorized the formation of a special investigation committee led by Scholar Nethrall to conduct a comprehensive analysis of human contributions to Council society. What they discovered changed everything the Council thought they knew about their former human members. The investigation team began their work in the vast archives beneath the Council headquarters, where automated systems had been recording every aspect of galactic civilization for centuries. Scholar Nethrall worked alongside specialists from every major species, though they quickly realized that human researchers would have been invaluable for this type of comprehensive analysis. We must examine every sector where humans were known to operate, Nethrall explained to her team. Our preliminary findings suggest that their influence extended far beyond their official duties and documented responsibilities. We need to understand the full scope of what we have lost. The medical records revealed the first shocking discovery. Dr. Yoon Ji-hai had been quietly tracking disease patterns across multiple species for over a decade, identifying potential health threats before they could develop into major outbreaks. Her research files contain detailed analyses of 3 separate incidents where her early intervention had prevented catastrophic plagues. Dr. Yoon's work on cross-species immunology was far more advanced than we realized, reported medical researcher Kex Tool, a Fentok specialist who had worked in the same facility. She had developed predictive models that could identify disease mutations weeks before they became detectable through standard screening methods. Her prevention protocols saved millions of lives, but she never published her methods or claimed credit for the successes. The investigation revealed that Dr. Yoon had been sharing her findings with medical authorities across Council space through informal communications that were not officially recorded. She had provided early warnings about potential health risks, suggested modifications to quarantine procedures, and developed treatment protocols that other species had implemented without realizing their human origin. She would send brief messages to medical facilities warning them to watch for specific symptoms or to adjust their sterilization procedures for certain types of cargo shipments, Kexatul explained. The warnings were always accurate, but they were presented as routine safety reminders rather than urgent alerts based on sophisticated analysis. The economic records told an equally startling story. Economist Song Woo Jin had been operating behind the scenes of galactic finance for years, making subtle adjustments to banking algorithms and trade regulations that had prevented 2 major economic collapses. His modifications had been so carefully integrated into existing systems that other species had assumed they were natural developments in financial technology. Mr. Song's economic models were incredibly sophisticated, admitted senior financial analyst Rikstov of the Merdal Banking Consortium. He had identified systemic vulnerabilities in our interspecies trade networks that could have caused catastrophic market failures. His solutions were implemented gradually through routine system updates and regulatory adjustments that appeared to be normal administrative improvements. The investigation team discovered that Song had been monitoring economic indicators across hundreds of worlds, tracking patterns of resource distribution, currency fluctuation, and trade volume that revealed dangerous instabilities in the galactic economy. His interventions had stabilized markets, prevented currency crashes, and maintained the complex financial relationships that kept trade flowing between species with vastly different economic systems. He never claimed to be preventing disasters, Rikstov continued. When questioned about his recommendations, he would explain them as minor efficiency improvements or routine maintenance of existing systems. We implemented his suggestions because they consistently improved performance and reduced operational costs. The engineering records revealed perhaps the most extensive human influence of all. Throughout Council space, human engineers and technicians had been quietly improving every type of technology they encountered. Their modifications were typically small and practical, but the cumulative effect had been to make Council infrastructure significantly more efficient and reliable than its original design specifications suggested was possible. Engineer Ha Yun-ji's work on asteroid mining operations had doubled productivity while reducing accident rates to nearly 0. Her improvements included better safety protocols, more efficient extraction methods, and equipment modifications that extended operational lifespans far beyond manufacturer recommendations. Engineer Ha understood that different asteroid compositions required different approaches, explained mining supervisor Greknall, whose operations had benefited from her expertise. She developed specialized techniques for each type of mineral extraction that minimized waste and maximized yield. Her safety improvements eliminated the catastrophic equipment failures that had previously killed dozens of workers every year. The investigation revealed that Ha had been sharing her innovations with mining operations throughout Council space, but always through informal channels that did not create official records of her contributions. She had trained local technicians, provided equipment modifications, and developed safety protocols that had transformed one of the galaxy's most dangerous industries into a model of efficiency and worker protection. In the diplomatic archives, the team discovered that diplomat Kang Taemin had been instrumental in preventing dozens of minor conflicts from escalating into major wars. His conflict resolution protocols had been quietly adopted by mediators across Council space, though few realized that the techniques originated from human psychological research. Mr. Kang had an unusual ability to understand the cultural factors that drive interspecies conflicts, noted diplomatic liaison Vel Cross, a Cathani officer who had worked with human diplomatic personnel. He could predict when seemingly minor disagreements would escalate into serious disputes, and he knew how to address the underlying issues before they became intractable problems. Kang's methods involved detailed analysis of cultural psychology, historical precedent, and economic pressure that allowed him to design resolution strategies tailored to the specific needs and motivations of each species involved in a dispute. His approaches had been so effective that they had become standard procedures for Council mediators, though the techniques were rarely attributed to their human creator. The most disturbing discoveries came from the security archives, where the investigation team found evidence of threats that the Council had never known existed. Security Chief Nam Ho-seok and his department had been operating a comprehensive threat detection and neutralization program that had prevented hundreds of potentially catastrophic incidents. Chief Nam's security operations were far more extensive than anyone realized, reported Intelligence Coordinator Thexril, whose own department had worked closely with human security personnel. His teams had identified and stopped 47 assassination attempts against high-ranking Council officials, prevented 31 terrorist attacks on civilian targets, and contained 12 potential ecological disasters that could have rendered entire worlds uninhabitable. The security records revealed a hidden war that had been fought in the shadows of galactic civilization. Human security specialists had been tracking dangerous individuals, monitoring extremist organizations, and intercepting weapons shipments that threatened the stability of Council space. Their operations had been so discreet and effective that the targets of protection had never realized they were in danger. Chief Nam's approach to security was preventive rather than reactive, Thexril explained. Instead of responding to threats after they materialized, his teams worked to identify and eliminate dangers before they could cause harm. They would track suspicious individuals, infiltrate dangerous organizations, and intercept illegal weapons or dangerous materials before they could be used against innocent targets. The investigation team realized that humans had been serving as the invisible guardians of galactic civilization, protecting other species from threats they did not even know existed. The human security apparatus had been so effective that the Council had enjoyed an unprecedented period of peace and stability without understanding why their civilization had become so much safer. As the months of investigation continued, the full scope of human contributions became clear. In every sector of society, humans had been working quietly behind the scenes to solve problems, prevent disasters, and improve the quality of life for billions of beings across hundreds of worlds. Their contributions had been so thoroughly integrated into the fabric of galactic civilization that other species had come to regard the resulting benefits as natural features of their society. The humans were not passive members of our community. Scholar Nethral concluded in her final report to the Council. They were the active maintenance system that kept our civilization functioning at optimal levels. Their departure has not simply removed 47 votes from our decision-making process. 2 years after the human departure, the Galactic Council faced its darkest hour. The slow decay that had begun with shipping delays and equipment failures had accelerated into a full civilizational crisis that threatened the survival of interspecies cooperation itself. The final blow came from an unexpected direction in the form of an enemy that the Council had never encountered before. Commander Velkron stood in the ruins of what had once been the pride of the Cathani fleet, watching, Rescue ships searched for survivors among the wreckage of 300 warships that had been destroyed in less than 4 hours. The Battle of Zerion Prime had been a catastrophic defeat that no one had seen coming, least of all the Cathani military command that had grown accustomed to easy victories over the past decade. The enemy called themselves the Zeridian Empire, reported war leader Thekarar, whose own command ship had barely escaped the slaughter. They appeared at the edge of the Zerion system with a fleet of unknown design and capabilities. Our standard battle formations proved completely ineffective against their tactics. Velcran studied the tactical recordings that had been transmitted by ships in the final moments before their destruction. The Zeridian vessels moved in complex patterns that seemed to anticipate every Cathani maneuver, striking at weak points in their formations with surgical precision. The engagement had been less like a battle and more like a demonstration of superior strategic thinking. How did our intelligence services fail to detect such a significant military threat? Velcran demanded. The Zeridian Empire fields hundreds of advanced warships and possesses tactical knowledge that surpasses our own capabilities. Such a force cannot have developed overnight. Thekarar consulted his battle reports with obvious reluctance. Intelligence analysis suggests that the Zeridian Empire has existed for several years, expanding gradually through sectors that we classified as uninhabited space. Our long-range reconnaissance missions failed to detect their presence because our scanning protocols were apparently inadequate for identifying their stealth technologies. The implications were devastating. The Cathani military had been operating under the assumption that their forces were the dominant power in their region of the galaxy. The existence of a superior enemy force meant that everything they believed about galactic security was dangerously wrong. What tactical options remain available to us? Velcran asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Our military analysts estimate that the Cathani defense forces are currently outmatched by a factor of approximately 3 to 1, Thekarar replied. The Zeridian Empire possesses superior technology, more effective tactical doctrine, and apparently better intelligence about our capabilities than we have about theirs. Direct military confrontation is not advisable under current circumstances. The defeat at Zerion Prime was only the beginning of the Council's problems. Across civilized space, the carefully constructed systems that had maintained interspecies cooperation for decades were collapsing under the weight of accumulated failures and missing expertise. The Merdal trade networks had fragmented into dozens of competing commercial factions that could no longer coordinate their activities effectively. Senior trader Gexmore found himself managing a commercial empire that was slowly strangling itself with inefficiency and missed opportunities. Cargo delivery delays have increased by an average of 40% over the past year, his assistant, Klixven, reported during their daily crisis management meeting. 3 major shipping routes have been abandoned entirely due to persistent scheduling failures. 7 commercial colonies have declared independence from Merdal trade agreements because they can no longer rely on our delivery commitments. The economic problems extended far beyond simple logistics. Without Song Wu-jin's careful management of galactic financial systems, currency exchange rates had become increasingly unstable. Several species had withdrawn from interspecies banking arrangements, preferring to conduct trade through primitive barter systems rather than risk their wealth in financial networks they no longer trusted. The Vegan Credit Union collapsed last month, Gexmore noted grimly. The Asteroid Miners Cooperative is demanding payment in raw materials rather than standard currency. The Frontier Development Bank has suspended all loans to new colonies because they cannot accurately assess economic risks under current market conditions. On the research worlds where the galaxy's greatest scientific minds worked to expand the boundaries of knowledge, critical projects were grinding to a halt as resources became scarce and collaboration broke down. Dr. Nethral struggled to maintain scientific cooperation between species that were increasingly focused on their own immediate survival rather than long-term advancement. The stellar engineering project in the Vega system has been suspended indefinitely, she reported to the Council's emergency session. The terraforming initiative on New Kepler has been abandoned due to technical difficulties that our engineering teams cannot resolve. The deep space communication array that was supposed to extend our contact range by 30% has been shut down because we cannot maintain the quantum entanglement systems that make it function. The cascade of failures had reached the point where individual species were beginning to question whether membership in the Galactic Council provided any benefits that justified the costs and complications of interspecies cooperation. Several minor species had already withdrawn from Council agreements, preferring to manage their own affairs rather than depend on systems that no longer functioned reliably. Council Speaker Veltar faced a crisis of legitimacy that threatened the fundamental existence of galactic civilization. The institution he had dedicated his life to serving was disintegrating, and he was powerless to stop the process. "We must acknowledge that our civilization has reached a critical juncture," he announced to the emergency assembly. "The systems and relationships that have maintained peace and prosperity for generations are failing. We face external threats that we cannot defeat and internal problems that we cannot solve with our current capabilities." The admission of failure was unprecedented in Council history. For the first time since the formation of interspecies government, the leaders of galactic civilization were publicly acknowledging that they did not know how to maintain the society they had inherited. "I propose that we authorize a diplomatic mission to human space," Veltar continued, his voice carrying the weight of desperate necessity. "We must attempt to restore the relationships that we allowed to deteriorate through our own negligence and short-sightedness." The proposal sparked immediate debate among the remaining council members. The proud Kethani were reluctant to admit that they needed help from a species they had previously considered inferior. The practical Merdal worried about the economic costs of failed negotiations. The scholarly Fentok questioned whether humans would be willing to forgive the council's previous neglect of their contributions. "What makes us believe that humans will be interested in returning to council space?" asked war leader Thekrar. "They departed voluntarily without expressing any grievances or demands. They may have simply concluded that their future lies elsewhere." Dr. Nethral provided the sobering answer that no one wanted to hear. "Our long-range sensors have detected massive construction projects in human space. Energy signatures suggest that they are building installations far larger and more advanced than anything in Council territory. Whatever they are doing, it appears to be succeeding beyond our current capabilities." The implications were clear. While the Council had been struggling with the consequences of human departure, the humans themselves had been thriving. They had not simply left Council space to return to their previous way of life. They had moved beyond it to something entirely new. Ambassador Kethavor of the Diplomatic Corps accepted the challenging assignment of leading the mission to human space. His ship departed from Council headquarters, carrying the hopes of billions of beings who were beginning to understand that they had lost something irreplaceable when they failed to appreciate the quiet competence of their human colleagues. The journey to human space took several weeks, during which Kethavor and his diplomatic team prepared for negotiations that would determine the future of galactic civilization. They reviewed every human contribution that the investigation had identified, studying the methods and motivations that had made human cooperation so valuable. When they finally reached the borders of human territory, they found something that exceeded their worst fears about the consequences of the human departure. The space that humans now controlled was vast, well-defended, and clearly prosperous. Advanced installations dotted the region, connected by shipping routes that hummed with efficient traffic. Most shocking of all, they detected the energy signatures of multiple non-human species operating within human space. The humans had not isolated themselves from galactic civilization. They had created their own version of it, apparently with willing partners who had chosen human leadership over council membership. As Ambassador Kethavor's ship approached the first human outpost, he received a polite but formal message from Captain Yang Seung-hwan of the Human Defense Fleet. The meeting took place aboard the human flagship Soul's Pride, a vessel that represented everything the Galactic Council had failed to understand about human capabilities. Ambassador Kethavor and his diplomatic team were escorted through corridors that hummed with advanced technology far beyond anything they had seen in Council space. The ship was not merely functional but elegant, combining practical efficiency with an aesthetic sense that spoke of confidence and prosperity. Admiral Bae Hyun-soo received the council delegation in a conference room whose transparent walls offered a spectacular view of human space. Beyond the flagship, dozens of advanced vessels moved in precise formations, while massive construction projects stretched across the visible horizon. The scale and sophistication of what the humans had accomplished in just 2 years was breathtaking. "Welcome to human space," Admiral Bae said. her tone professionally courteous, but carrying an undertone of strength that had not been present in human voices during their years in the Council. "I understand that you have requested this meeting to discuss the possibility of renewed cooperation between our peoples." Ambassador Kethvor studied the woman across the conference table and realized immediately that he was facing a very different kind of human leader than the quiet diplomats who had once occupied the modest brown section of the council chambers. Admiral Bay projected confidence and authority that spoke of success and independence, rather than the cautious deference that had characterized human behavior during their council membership. "Admiral Bay, I come here on behalf of the Galactic Council to acknowledge that we have made serious errors in our relationship with humanity," Kethvor began, following the carefully prepared script that his diplomatic team had developed during their journey. "We failed to recognize the valuable contributions that your people made to our civilization, and we deeply regret the circumstances that led to your departure from Council space." Admiral Bay listened to the formal apology with polite attention, but her expression suggested that she was hearing nothing that surprised her. When Kethvor finished his prepared remarks, she responded with the directness that humans had always preferred over diplomatic subtlety. "Ambassador Kethvor, your apology is noted and appreciated," she said. "However, I suspect that you are here not simply to acknowledge past mistakes, but to request assistance with the problems that followed our departure. Before we discuss any form of cooperation, I believe it would be helpful for you to understand what humanity has accomplished since we left Council space." The Admiral activated a holographic display that filled the center of the conference table with a three-dimensional map of human territory. The scope of what Kethvor saw was stunning. Human space had expanded far beyond its original boundaries, encompassing dozens of star systems that contained thriving colonies, advanced research facilities, and industrial installations of unprecedented scale. "In the 2 years since our departure, we have established colonies on 47 worlds, built 17 major research stations, and constructed industrial facilities capable of supporting a population that has grown by 30%, Admiral Bay explained. "Our technological capabilities have advanced significantly, and our economic output has increased by a factor of nearly 3. The display showed details that made the achievements even more impressive. Human colonies were not simply surviving, but flourishing, with infrastructure that surpassed anything the Council had ever built. Research stations were producing scientific breakthroughs at rates that exceeded the combined output of all Council institutions. Industrial facilities were manufacturing goods with efficiency levels that would have seemed impossible under Council economic models. Most significantly," Admiral Bay continued, "we have established cooperative relationships with multiple species that have chosen to work with us rather than remain within the Council system." The holographic display shifted to show the locations of non-human settlements throughout human space. Kethvor recognized the energy signatures of several species, including some that had been Council members until recently. The implications were deeply troubling for the future of Council authority. "The Velian Collective withdrew from the Council 6 months ago to join our Confederation," Admiral Bay noted. "The Altarian research communes followed 3 months later. The frontier mining guilds officially transferred their allegiance to human leadership 4 weeks ago. In each case, these species reported that they found human cooperation more beneficial than Council membership." Dr. An Min Ho, the human scientific representative, provided additional details that highlighted the contrast between human progress and Council decline. His presentation included research breakthroughs that the Council's scientific institutions had been struggling to achieve for decades. "Our research teams have developed faster-than-light communication systems that provide real-time contact across distances that previously required weeks of travel time," Dr. An explained. "We have achieved breakthrough improvements in energy generation that have eliminated resource scarcity as a limiting factor for colonial development. Our medical researchers have developed treatment protocols that have extended average lifespans for all cooperating species by 15 to 20%. The scientific achievements were impressive enough, but the implications for interspecies relations were even more significant. Humans had not simply improved their own capabilities, they had created a model of cooperation that provided greater benefits to member species than anything the Council had ever offered." "How have you achieved such rapid progress?" Ambassador Kethvor asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "We focused our efforts on solving problems rather than managing bureaucracies," Admiral Bay replied. During our years in the Council, we observed that most interspecies difficulties arose from the failure to understand and accommodate the different needs and capabilities of various species. We developed our confederation based on the principle that cooperation should enhance the strengths of each member rather than requiring them to conform to standardized approaches. The explanation revealed the fundamental difference between human and Council approaches to interspecies relations. The Council had attempted to create unity through standardization, requiring all member species to adapt to common systems and procedures. Humans had created unity through customization, adapting their cooperation methods to optimize the unique capabilities of each partner species. We offer our partners what they need to succeed, rather than demanding that they accept what we choose to provide, Dr. On added. This approach has proven far more effective at generating mutual benefits and long-term stability. Ambassador Kethavor realized that he was not negotiating with a desperate species seeking to return to Council protection. He was dealing with representatives of a civilization that had surpassed the Council in virtually every measure of success and advancement. The humans no longer needed anything that the Council could offer. What would it take for humanity to consider returning to Council space? He asked, though the question felt increasingly hollow even as he spoke it. Admiral Bay's response was gentle but decisive. Ambassador, you are thinking about this situation incorrectly. You see us as a solution to your problems, but we have moved beyond being anyone's solution. We are writing our own future now, and that future does not include subordinating ourselves to Council authority. The Admiral paused to let her words sink in before continuing with an offer that was both generous and devastating to Council hopes. However, we are not interested in seeing our former colleagues suffer unnecessarily. We are prepared to offer limited trade agreements and non-aggression pacts that would allow both our civilizations to coexist peacefully. We can provide certain technological innovations and medical treatments that would help address some of your current difficulties. The offer was everything that Kethavor had hoped for, and nothing that he had wanted to hear. Humans were willing to help the Council, but only as a superior civilization providing assistance to struggling neighbors. The relationship that the Council sought to restore would never exist again because the humans had grown beyond the need for it. We appreciate your generous offer, Kethavor replied, recognizing that he had no choice but to accept whatever terms the humans were willing to provide. I will need to consult with Council leadership about the specific arrangements that would be most beneficial. Admiral Bay nodded graciously and provided him with communication protocols for future negotiations. As the meeting concluded, she offered one final observation that captured the new reality of human-Council relations. Ambassador, during our years in the Council, we learned valuable lessons about cooperation and governance. We are grateful for those experiences, even though they ultimately taught us that we needed to chart our own course. We hope that the Council can learn similar lessons from this experience and find ways to improve the lives of its member species. The journey back to Council space gave Ambassador Kethavor time to prepare his report and consider the implications of what he had witnessed. The humans had not simply departed from Council space. They had graduated to something greater, leaving their former colleagues to struggle with problems that humanity had already solved.